We're kicking off our brand new Christmas series called Christmas is Coming. Technically, it's the second week of the Christmas season, but your pastor done messed up by failing to talk about week one of Advent, which I understand is kind of a big deal. But Advent is a fancy word that means getting our hearts and minds ready for Christmas, okay? That's basically what it means. And growing up, my parents did not hesitate to overemphasize the Advent season in our house. Like, it was Christian everything all the time. I mean, Christian radio, Christian TV shows, Christian concerts, Christian amusement parks. I bet many of you didn't even know those existed. They do, and they're way, way worse than Six Flags. It's always like, dang it, we have to go there, focus on the family headquarters? That's fantastic. They have like a slide. It's an amusement park. It's fantastic. You're going to love it. No, it's terrible. I love Jesus, though. Right? They sent me to school in Christian t-shirts. Thanks, Mom and Dad. That's great. In the heart of very liberal Minnesota. Really love getting bullied. Fantastic. I swore I would not do that to my kids, but as a parent, I love getting my kids' hearts ready for Christmas. It's such a big deal at our house. A lot of you guys do Elf on the Shelf. We do Shepherd's Treasure. Hello, the Christian version of Elf on the Shelf, which is all about the shepherd going around looking for Jesus, trying to discover the treasure of Jesus. Love it. Fantastic. We bake Jesus a birthday cake on Christmas Day. My kids go to school in First.church t-shirts all the time. Hello, they're my walking billboards. And we do a devotional around the table most nights. Around Advent season, we like to do a Christmas one. And we read Christian books and music all the time. And I look back at my childhood, and I'm just so grateful that my parents worked so hard to show me who Jesus was at Christmas time. And that's what the series is about. It's like Elf on the Shelf, but for grown-ups. It's all about preparing our hearts for Jesus. I want to say Merry Christmas to everybody joining us online, everybody at all of our live services, and I want to say a special Merry Christmas to our Jasper County Jail campus. We love you, and we're so glad that you're joining us at both services there. And this 3-week series, including Christmas Eve, is going to be really special. Each week is going to focus on a different part of preparing our heart for Christmas. I really, really want to invite you to be a part of every single week. And you know what's interesting is today I want to talk about peace. It's the peace week of Advent, and we're in a high point of stress. Isn't that funny? Like, it's all about peace, and yet this week, more than almost any other all year technically, is like the high point of stress and anxiety for Christians. And, Monday in January, the third Monday in January is the most depressed time of the year. And I'm going to do a 3-week series called Hope in the Dark at late January that's going to talk about depression. But Christmas is not depression's high point. It's stress and anxiety's high point. And today we're talking about peace. And, I get why Christmas is so stressful. I mean, Kristen and I had a extremely crazy fall, and I was looking forward to a slower December. But it turns out, and thanks, honey, for this, every single night for the month of December is pretty much booked already. So I was like, awesome, Kristen, I'm so glad that you do that. That's fantastic. Can't wait. Going to be awesome. If you're coming over, though, for real, I'm glad you are. But we got to get Christmas presents, too. And, when I was younger, Christmas presents were easy. I'd get my first gift, and then I'd just pay it forward in a long, chain of re-gifting. That's just what I did, right? My brother would give me Star Fox 64, and then I'd be, wrapping it up again. I'd be like, Mom, I got you Star Fox 64. Do a barrel roll. You're going to love it. You know what I mean? Christmas is a ton of fun, but a lot of pressure. And today I want to talk about getting through it without regrets. I want to talk about finding peace this season, and I want to talk about experiencing God's best by making great choices at Christmas. And instead of finishing the season spent and wasted, I want to equip you, regardless of what you believe, whether or not you believe in Jesus, I want to equip you with the ability to come out of this season with real joy and peace. So you're going to want to lean into what I'm teaching today if you struggle with stress and pressure. Let's start by looking at our key passage today. It's all about this lady named Martha who struggles with a little bit of anxiety and stress because specifically she wants to celebrate Jesus coming to her house. You know what I mean? That's a lot of pressure. Like, Jesus is coming to her house, kind of stressful. Starts in Luke 10:38. I encourage you to turn there. Jesus is coming over unannounced for dinner. Do you remember when that was okay? Do you remember when, going to somebody's house was okay without announcing yourself? We called it company. We've got company, right? And my mom used to keep this little stash of things in case we had company that would come over. She'd be like, up, John, don't eat that. That's for company, right? And you'd say it with this sacred, if company were to grace us with their presence, it would be so wonderful. And I remember with hopeful expectation, every night there'd be headlights on the hill, and I'd be like, please come to our house so we can eat that stuff. Please come over. And eventually, you'd be watching the Cosbys, and Mr. Huxtable, Dr. Huxtable would be doing some great stuff. You'd be like, this is amazing, this family, whatever, so funny, and Theo's such a moron, and whatever. And all of a sudden, bing bong, and it would be like, yes, company's here. Everybody get out the stuff, get out the linens, get out the stash, and you'd open it up and it'd be like, we've got company. Thank you for coming over. We're so glad that you're here. Get out Monopoly, get out the game of life. We'd talk, we'd laugh. It felt like winning the lottery. And I can remember fondly several times as a child this happening. Now a car pulls in the driveway and it's like, kids, be quiet. Shut the blinds, okay? Don't answer the door. Don't answer. Shh, we're not home. It's ironic because I'd rather watch somebody's story on the gram than see them in real life. Do you ever think about that? Like, I want to watch somebody have fun, but I don't want to be bothered with the stress of actually having fun with them. You know, it's like, oh my goodness, Zachary and Blair, they're such a cute couple. They're singing karaoke. They do such great stories. Oh my goodness, they just pulled up in our driveway. Kids, go to bed. Hi, no, yes, we all just got out of the bath in here. We can't go home. You know, just kidding, I'd never do that to them. But actually, never mind. Okay, Jesus is about to stop by these ladies' house for dinner. This is when company was still welcomed. It's a big deal. That's where we pick up in the story. It says, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Now, she's got a sister named Mary who's also hosting. And Mary and Martha are overjoyed that Jesus is stopping by. They get out the Chex Mix, the Christmas tin of popcorn, and they turn the radio to Shine.fm, because that's what you do when your pastor comes over, right? Shine.fm is what we listen to all the time, Pastor. You know, good times and great oldies. No, wait, that's not what they say. Positive, encouraging, uplifting, right? That's good. Okay. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what was taught, but Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. Now, here's the problem: when company comes by, they're there to see you, to connect with you, right? They want to, and we use this old Christian-y word for this. I don't know why, but it's called fellowship. We're going to fellowship together. We're going to hang out. We're going to break bread together, right? And Jesus wanted to hang out with them. And Martha is stressed. And I would be too. I mean, she's like, you guys, it's Jesus Christ, y'all, okay? It's Jesus Christ. A slightly stale tin of Christmas popcorn I've been saving for 2 months is never going to do it. You know what I mean? Like, remember these? Like, he'd pull these out. And here's the thing. Why is the yellow popcorn half? I don't even know what that is, but it tastes nasty. The best popcorn everybody knows is the cheese, right? So everybody's just mowing on the cheese. Like, when we would get these, it was greedy avarice, but I would like eat so much cheese because I didn't want him to get more than I did. You know what I mean? And I didn't want any more. I just knew that if I didn't eat it, he would. So I'm just like, stuff. Okay. Martha's like, this is mission critical, people. The cheese is almost gone. What are we going to do? I've got to get gifts. I got to make dinner. I got to get the silverware. I got to get the leaves for the table. She's working her little tail off. And she gets stressful, right? I got to get the dust bunnies out from under the couch, because what if we move that and then there's dust bunnies everywhere? It's going to be terrible, right? So she came to Jesus, and she puts her sister Mary on blast. This is not appropriate. It's not a good way to confront people, just so you know. Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits there while I do all the work? You tell her, that's not how to communicate. You tell her to come help me, right? It's like, oh, wow. And isn't this classic Enneagram type 2? I'm just going to serve my guts out, doing things no one asked because I saw a need, but then I'm angry and resentful because people didn't appreciate me, right? And to me, this is like straight up Jerry Springer, right? She does this, and everybody's like, oh, Jerry, except Jesus. You know, security comes out. Mary and Martha are like squaring up on each other, getting ready to fight. You know what I mean? And Jesus comes out and is like, Martha, 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 right? Like, everybody, cool out here, okay? I don't want any wigs getting ripped off. Everybody calm down, okay? The Lord answered, you are worried about many things, but few things are needed. Isn't that interesting? We get into this Christmas season, and I think that's like one of the most like interesting phrases that Jesus gives. Few things are needed. Oftentimes, we feel like, we have to do so much to prepare for Christmas, but how much really do we have to do? I think at the end of the day, much less than we think. He goes, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. There's so much in this passage to teach from, but fundamentally, I think Christmas is stressful because we misprioritize our time. And I think this is a lesson about time allocation. I think this whole thing that Jesus is giving is one of the most important lessons we can learn as people. Jesus would be like, hey, listen, Martha, I fed 5,000 people with a kid's Lunchable. I think I'm okay. I mean, I made manna fall from heaven, and I fed 2 million people breakfast, lunch, and dinner with that for 40 years. Okay? I think I got this cooking thing, hosting thing on lock. I didn't come here to taste your food. I'm not here for food. I'm not here to see your fine china. I'm here for you, right? Jesus is chastising her because she's misprioritizing her time. We don't need fancy. You don't need to impress me. I'm not here to compete with you. I want to know you. The Bible doesn't tell us how Martha responded. I get that Jesus' deal here sounds a little bit harsh, but Jesus is addressing something really important. And I think it's easy for us to get a little bit defensive because we feel a little personally attacked here when we see what Martha is doing. And that's because there's a critical skill here that Jesus is trying to give to her that I think a lot of us lack, called time allocation and prioritization. And I think a lot of times people have no strategy for our time allocation. We just do whatever. If someone invites us to do something, you know what we do? We just open up our phone calendar and we think, yeah, date's open, date's not. And at best, we might ask ourselves the question, do I feel like it? We don't think about why I feel like it. We don't think about if it's a good idea. We just think, do I feel like it? We don't ask critical, good questions like, is this the best use of my time? That's a great question to ask when someone invites, is this the best use of my time in this? How about this one? Have I gotten everything else important done? Critical question before actually scheduling something. Or this one, by saying yes to this, is there something else more important that won't get done? Because ultimately, what Jesus' lesson boils down to, and what my main point today is, every yes is a no to something else. This is why Christmas is stressful. Because we start saying yes to a bunch of different things in our life, forgetting that every yes is a no to something else. When you say yes to gifts, you're saying no to time spent with your kids because you're wrapping these gifts. You're putting on. When you say yes to this party, you're saying no to. When you say yes to getting that deer in late November because you haven't tagged out yet, you're saying no to all these other important things. Because here's a simple truth, and this is a big deal. 100% of the time, we use 100% of our time. Everybody on earth uses all the time. Like everybody uses the same 24 hours a day. And nobody finishes a day using less than 24 hours unless they die, right? We use all of our time all of the time. This is such an important thing to understand. And today what I want to do is I want to teach you how to reprioritize your time in a way that will reduce stress and anxiety and leave you with fewer regrets and maybe even peace at the end of this Christmas season. Now, I've got an illustration that is an old pastor illustration. Some of you may have seen this before, some of you haven't. Pastors use this around the country, but I think it's a really, really good illustration that I think is going to be helpful. And this jar right here represents our time this Christmas season, all of it, right? This is the capacity that we have during the holiday season, during the Christmas season. You can't have more, you can't have less. This is all you have to fill up. This sand represents the little things we like to do, right? Like scrolling and trolling on the gram, okay? Listening to good music and just listening to it, not doing anything. For young singles, it's hanging out on Bumble and on TikTok. What is TikTok? You know what I mean? Like I tried to do TikTok and it was like, apparently you just watch these little videos. This is stupid. But anyway, I don't get it. I'm old, okay? This is like watching Netflix, okay? I don't get what the deal is with Mandalorian, okay? It's a little baby. Like, you know what's cuter than that baby is a real baby. You know what I mean? Like, that's an alien baby. I don't want that baby. I want a real baby. Partying, you know, that's a Sandy thing. Hunting, fishing, hobbies, dancing, vacations, that's the sand, right? These pebbles, they represent things that are moderately important in the Christmas season, right? So this is stuff like getting gifts for people that you care about. Decorating your house to make braggadocious posts on the gram. Super important, right? You have to definitely one-up your sister. Tag your sister in it, right? Hey, check this out. I just wanted you to see my coordinated tinsel and whatever. Because, you know, when I was a little girl, you took my shirt and you said it was yours and it was brand new and whatever, right? And I just want you to see that, right? Making lavish meals for guests. All important stuff. And then these big rocks represent what's most important. And in the order of importance, God, people, and then I would say third important. This might be a surprise to some of you guys, but I think it is the third most important at Christmas, finances, okay? And I want to talk about the way we allocate these normally, and then I want to talk about a new method. I'm going to pull that second illustration up that's sitting under here, and I want to talk about a new way to allocate these things. But I think for so many of us come Christmas season, we're like, I got to get my deer. I got to get my hobbies in. I got to watch YouTube videos for hours thinking about all this, cool stuff that I could do. I got to think about new businesses I could start. I want to think about all these different things that I could do, right? And that's just our sandy portion of life. And we dump that in. And, it's cuffing season. That's a sandy thing, right? I mean, think about this. If you go to your family holiday year after year, and some of you guys who aren't old and single, you don't understand, but if you go to your family holiday thing year after year, and all your brothers and sisters have all their little nephews, and they're like, oh, you're the fun aunt, play with them, and you're like, no, this is actually terrible, and I don't want to hang out with them. You just start swiping right come this time of year to find somebody to get a little serious with for a minute. Hey, I don't like you, you don't like me, but we can't do this holiday thing for another year, so let's just be serious for a minute, right? You think, I got to watch, all my stories. I got to watch my Instagram stories. Oh, and then here's the problem with holiday season. This is a very sandy thing. You're like, there's my ex. He's so successful. I'm happy for him, though. Look at that girl he's with. She's ugly, right? I'm just going to spend the next 2 hours liking every post he's made for the last 2 years, right? How do you like me now? I'm still here, right? Still looking great. And then I'm eating a whole pint of Ben & Jerry's and think I need another cat. I'm going to be single forever, whatever. That's what sand represents, right? That's the sand, okay? Then there's the pebbly things. This is like, okay, I cannot do this forever. I got to move forward in my life, actually get ready for Christmas. I got to go shopping. Now we do it on Amazon. Remember when you used to have to go to the mall and find a parking spot? It was like terrible. You'd be parking in a snowdrift in like lot D way out there, getting a tram to move you in. It's like, oh, thanks. This is great hosting. Well, you know what you could do to help this tram be more comfortable is get a bus that has walls and heat. This is ridiculous. But anyway, I digress. First world problems, okay? You're like, add those slippers to cart for mom because she needs those slippers. Add that Yankee Woodwick candle to cart for my sister. Why does she like those? I don't know, but they're like $1 million for a candle. This is crazy. Why does a Woodwick candle cost $1 million? But nevertheless, you know what I like is, have you noticed that they have that section called You Might Also Like? Okay, when I shop for people, that section gets all messed up, okay? I like it when you might also like, O'Neill wetsuit. That's what I like. That's my thing, right? Now, my you might also like is like essential oils elderberry potion. What is that, right? What is that? Do you want to live to be 135 and never get sick again? Well, actually, yes, I would. I'll buy this magic potion, whatever. These are the pebbles. This is decorating your house. This is a big one. I'm going to stop on Pinterest, that's that website, for like 2 minutes / 2 days. And by the time I'm done, you're like, I'm a pedestrian plebe. My house is so Charlie Brown. This is horrible. It used to be you decorate your Christmas tree with just all your kids' stuff that they made you in school. You just send it, you put all that up there, your tree's good. But now because of Pinterest, every person has an inferiority complex because that one chick in California did her house all perfect and whatever. It's great when you own Facebook and you can pay people to make your house look like that, but all the rest of us over here in the Midwest, we don't need to compare to you, but we do. So then, after you take care of all the actual Christmas prep stuff, it's like, I just spent $790 on elderberry potion. I need to figure something out. I got to work overtime, right? So you put your overtime rock in there. That's a lot of time because you're working all this. And then it's like, well, I bought all this stuff. I got to go to the family parties. The problem is, by the time that you have worked all the overtime, you can barely make it to the family parties, right? It's like, barely even fits. I can't make them all. All the things that I got, I'm like, show up for a little bit, and then it's like, got to go back to work tonight because I got to pay for all the things that I bought you at these parties, a little bit of resentment. And then the third rock is God. And it's like, God, listen, okay? Conversation between me and God. I have skipped church 3 times since November. My streak is broken on the Bible app, and they're asking for capital campaign commitments. Let's be honest, I can't even keep my commitment to take a shower right now, God. Okay? So I don't know if I can make it to church today. Even though you're the reason for the season, listen, my season is ruined. Why? It feels like there's not enough time, right? It feels like it doesn't all fit. Like you can't fit it all in there. You can't fit him in. And the problem, it's not that there's not enough time. Is that the order's messed up. And here's what's critical to remember. Every yes is a no to something else. And 100% of the time, we use 100% of our time. I think the problem is sometimes we just don't do it that efficiently, right? When you say yes to Netflix, when you say yes to Fortnite, you're saying no to things that might actually need to be done. When you say yes to hunting, you're saying no to family. And I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm not saying you can't do those things. Maybe you're watching someone else who does those things all the time, but maybe they took care of the big things before they got to those little things, and you haven't in your life. And I just think this is a big deal in our life. And this is what I've really learned to take to the bank is almost always what's really important doesn't feel that urgent, at least in my life. Like if it's really important, I can just put it off. And what is urgent is rarely important. It feels very urgent. I got to take care of it right now. I got to answer this text message. I got to answer this email. But really, it's not the most important thing. And I think the problem is we don't realize it until it's too late, until something that's really important is getting bumped from our life, like our family and like God. And listen, if you do the important things first, and the medium things second, and the least important things third, I think you're going to find that there's a much better way to do this. This Christmas, I want to challenge you to get your priorities right. And I want to talk about a different way to do this. The first rock that I think we put in, we start with the big things first. The first rock I want to talk about is God. And I think we seek God first in everything we do. Matthew 6:33 says, "But seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you." This is such a big, I know some of you guys might be like, why would you seek God first? What is the big deal about that? I would drop this in here, but I shattered one of these in practice, and that's a bad choice. I felt bad for the glass when I broke it. So anyway, why would you seek God first? Even if you don't believe in God, why would you seek God first? I believe even if you don't believe in him, you should seek him first. Because it turns out statistically that Christians are the most satisfied, most productive, most generous, most joyful people on earth as a matter of statistical fact, despite being statistically the most persecuted and discriminated people group on earth. Isn't that interesting? I mean, it's kind of amazing to think about. And Christian, according to Gallup, is defined by people who are engaged with the church 3 times monthly or more, okay? And I know you might say I'm religious at home or whatever, but for the sake of that study, like the people who are actually joyful are the ones who are engaged with church. It turns out, like, even if you believe in God, but you're not engaged with a Christian community, it doesn't bring you the same level of joy that it would otherwise. So that's a big deal, being engaged with the church. But it's kind of amazing to me that even though we are the most persecuted people on earth, like more so than Muslims, more so than any other race, it's Christians, we have the greatest amount of joy. And I think ultimately it comes down to this. I know some of you, you don't believe in God. You're like, how can that be? How are Christians? Why are Christians? I think it comes down to our fundamental beliefs. Think about this. If you're an atheist, and I have a bunch of atheist relatives who evangelized me heavily to follow their religion as a kid. But if you're an atheist, it's to assume we're here by a cosmic random event in a miserable existence, slowly returning to entropy with no truth or meaning other than our own random desires, which are generated from inert stardust fizzing with stardust. I mean, that's all our emotions are, just this stardust interacting with stardust. That's the belief of atheism, right? Which is better, that or to believe this? We're made by a loving God in his image with a great purpose and a call to love others. I mean, I think about it and I'm like, man, and this is as a kid, I remember my relatives evangelizing me really heavily. And I just thought, man, even if it isn't true, I would rather believe that Christianity is real. And for the record, we know categorically that God is real. Something doesn't come from nothing. Intelligent design doesn't come from no intelligence. There's no other religion in human history that corresponds with archaeology, biology, history, sociology like Christianity does. And look, as we watch America lead the teachings of Jesus, we are becoming measurably far less happy, despite having far more and far better. Like we have far less crime, far greater safety. We live in the best, safest society ever. But directly correlated with a departure from Christianity as Americans, we see measurably less happiness. Even if God wasn't real, why would you ever want to follow a hate-filled, superstitious religion like atheism? I mean, fundamentally, atheism has caused more human atrocities in the 20th century than every other human ideology combined ever. 200 million people murdered by this one ideology in the 20th century. The fundamental belief of atheism is that there is no truth, meaning, or purpose. Yet as Christians, we have motivation and purpose for everything. I know a lot of people, you'd say, well, I'm not an atheist, but I think it's very similar to simply being irreligious, right? I'm just not involved. I just rather not care. I just rather not think about it. I think that is a harmful perspective because as Christians, we have motivation, purpose, and a guide for everything. As parents, why would you not put the God rock in first and show your kids that following Jesus is the best way? This is the single best gift and determiner of future joy that we can give to our kids. That's a really big deal. Right, come Christmas season, I mean, I think about my parents, and, as a kid, I was like, oh, they're laying the Jesus thing on so thick before I became a Christian. But now as a parent, I recognize that was the single greatest gift that my parents gave to me. Of all the things I've ever received from them, it was a love for Jesus that I'm most grateful for. I put the God rock in first because the God of the Bible is real and true. I put the God rock in first because following him informs every other decision I make as a person, and I find that motivating and helpful and uplifting. But really, I put it in first because I want to give my kids this great gift. Parents and families, you're here today. Do you want your children to have a better chance at being productive, happy, with intergenerational prosperity, and a better chance of having long-lasting marriages? It turns out that putting the God rock in first is one of the best ways to do that. People ask me all the time, why would you seek God first? There are so many reasons. Why would you not seek God first? I just think that so many of us, we say, oh yeah, I seek God first. I love God. But if we're really being honest, I think most of us are not. Like, let's be honest today. Most of us say we do this. We say we love God, but if you actually look at the way we allocate our time, allocate our passions, allocate our treasure, most of us don't do that. And Christmas, centrally being about Jesus, not presents, not decorations, not parties, but God our creator, coming from heaven to earth as a baby. That's who Jesus is, God, our creator, coming from heaven to earth as a baby. If you were to ask a young child, based on how your mom and dad actually spend their time, treasure, and talent, is God the first thing in their life? Most of them would say, no. And I think for us, I find that convicting. I want to put the God rock in first because I believe if I seek God first, all these other things will be taken care of. Second rock I want to talk about represents people. People, this is a big deal. Okay, Jesus says to Martha, girl, come on. And I'm kind of paraphrasing there. But food, decorations, and gift, listen, this stuff isn't going to matter when you're older. Like, what's going to matter 35 years from now? When I look at my childhood Christmases, I do remember some presents fondly. Like, I remember when I opened up my Chumbawamba CD, right? Remember that? I get knocked down, but I get up again. I thought, thank God, this song will never get old. 10 seconds later, I was like, I've made a terrible mistake. But when I first opened it, I thought, this is fantastic. No, my favorite memories for Christmas aren't the gifts. It's playing cards with family, enjoying time with my aunts and uncles. I would say, honestly, my favorite part about Christmas was sitting with my parents and my brother opening presents. I want to be clear, it wasn't opening the presents that was the fun part. It was all four of us sitting together in joy, not fighting and not doing other things, but just focusing on each other, putting everything aside for a minute. Like, that's what I liked. It was the people. It was the people. It was special to have the whole family be together. Kristen and I have thought a lot about what we want our family to be about, and this is interesting. So Kristen had a different upbringing. I mean, there was a lot of abuse and addiction and other stuff in her childhood, but she also had a materialistically very blessed upbringing. Her parents came from nothing, and they worked especially hard to make sure that Kristen and her sisters had everything, and they were able to give them a lot. Like, she had a 7,000 square foot mansion on ideal property, really close to the heart of the Twin Cities. They had 7 fireplaces, 3 laundry rooms, 7 bathrooms, heated floors, marble everything, top of the line everything, 30,000 gallon in-ground pool, barns just full of toys. They had an electric gate and a fountain and a statue in the center of their driveway. And I remember the first time she brought me home, she never mentioned that she was loaded. She failed to mention that while we were dating, right? And she's like, hey, just so you know, like, maybe 2 seconds before we pull in, just so you know, my parents' house kind of big. We pull in, I'm like, what is happening? Is your dad Jerry Jones? Like, what in the world? Where did this is, who, why? You have a statue, right? Every Christmas, she got everything, like literally dozens of gifts. Like, if she wanted it, she got it. And she said the gifts meant nothing. She and her sisters just remember the value of getting attention from her parents instead of their nanny. And she thought that that was a really special thing, that her parents, it wasn't the food, it wasn't the music, it wasn't the things, it was the love and attention she got. And I just keep reminding myself, she left all of that for all of this right here. Hello. I told Kristen, I said, are you sure? Because, I'm bad. We were so broke when we got married. We stopped at Mike's Discount Grocery. You had to sign a waiver when you bought the food. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we do not hold Mike's responsible for this stuff because it might kill you. But yeah, you could buy Mike's Discount. They had Mike's Discount medicine too. That's bad. But they sold it, right? We had to rent our basement out to 2 smelly single guys named Corey. I forgot the other guy's name, but he was really important to me. So it was bad. They were, Corey and Jordan, they were really messy, and we lived there. And listen. For us, we just realized that this stuff doesn't matter. And we just made a decision recognizing, looking at both of our childhood, what mattered most. I'm not suggesting you do this. I'm not telling the church they have to do this. This would be like the worst church service ever if I'd said, church, you should do this. But this is what we elected to do, is we don't get our kids presents from mom and dad. Right? People around them are so kind. We made a decision, and for us, like, our big commodity is time with our children. That's something we really struggle with. And so at the Christmas season, we just amalgamate all the time we would spend doing that. For us, like 6 to 8 hours, shopping for, buying, wrapping, deciding presents. And we just say, we are going to spend that time intentionally with our kids. And each year, that's what we do. Christmas is a especially rich season for our children, where we just focus on playing board games with them, on playing with them, on really giving them some good attention, 2-on-4 attention, because we have 4 kids. And that's a big deal. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do gifts. I'm not saying you can't do gifts, okay? There are some people here who do it, and you're so good at it, and you love it, and keep doing it. But if you are bumping people out of your life to spend time doing these pebbly things, wrap gifts, buy stuff, work overtime to pay for all this stuff, I don't think that's the best allocation of time. I'm not saying you can't. I just think that there are more important things. And when we really prioritize the way we spend our time, I think there's a lot of us who finish Christmas with a ton of regrets because we don't allocate things correctly, right? Which brings me to my third rock, which is finances. This is such a big deal for us. This is such a big stressor. I can't ask you enough. Before you go buying gifts, before you go shopping, before you go doing all this stuff, take a moment to set some boundaries, to count the cost, and to make a budget this Christmas. And I think you will be so much happier. I think so often people are depressed after Christmas because we spent money, which is just time that we've converted into money for something that wasn't even a part of the big three. It was all these pebbly things that we did first, right? We did all these pebbly things, and it might feel good for a minute to spend this money and do this stuff, but when you get to the end of the quarter, right? When you spend all that money and Christmas is coming and oh my goodness, quarterly taxes is December 15th, what are we gonna do? And going to the Indiana door pay or whatever it is and paying on this old kajankety website and honey, I forgot about this and how are we gonna do this? Just talking about my life here, okay? When you get to the end of the quarter, the most important things, if they're not fitting in, it's not gonna feel very good. One of my favorite passages in the Bible is Luke 14:28. It says, "But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of the building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it?" This is a big deal to me, right? Who would do that? Who would start a building without? I'll tell you who. Proverbially, tons of Americans every single Christmas. This is literally the reason so many people at Christmas are so stressed. I think this is one of the big things that Satan does to rob us of joy and satisfaction at Christmas time. And I want to ask you to consider making sure that you can fit the rock of finances in before you go doing those other things. It's a big stress for things that ultimately don't matter. The three big rocks in order are God, people, and finances. If any of those things are knocked out of the time that you have at Christmas, you're going to have a rough Christmas. It's going to be stressful and it's going to be anxious. But if you do those things first, you can guarantee that they'll fit in. Now, I look at these smaller things, which we've already talked about, the pebbles. They represent decorations, parties, and presents. And I'm not saying that you can't, shouldn't, won't, don't do these things. They're all good. Do them. But just count the costs and make sure that you have space to do these things. Make sure that you've done these other three big things or you've provided for or planned for all of these other big things before you start doing these things. Begin with these things after the big three are taken care of, and you'll have a much better Christmas season. And honestly, I think that doing these things out of order is the reason so many of us are stressed. And if you have a big financial issue, right? And let's say the finance rock is really big one year, which has happened for us in our lives. If you leave some of the pebbles out, it's not going to feel that bad. You know what I mean? But if you have the big rock of finances sticking out, it's like, oh, I can't fit this in. It's going to feel way worse than missing out on a few pebbles, right? That's just what I was thinking right there, okay? Got to shake that around, make sure this illustration works right. That's what the pebbles represent. Finally, there's the sand stuff. The sand represents the unimportant things, okay? And this is stuff that literally does not matter in the long run. Like it has zero long-term benefit. And there's so much in our life that doesn't have long-term benefit. This week, I had a cell phone outage. We're switching cell phone plans, super inconvenient. Never do that. It always takes more time, treasure, and talent than you think it's going to take. But I remember not having that cell phone, and I was like, wow, like everything happens so much faster, especially going to the bathroom, because you just, you know what I mean? Anyway, zero long-term benefit. If you just do these things in the right order, there's going to be so much more time to do this stuff. But if some of the sand doesn't fit, which I think it will, but if in your life, some of the sand of life, won't do it, there we go. If some of the sand doesn't fit, you're not going to be like, oh man, this is the worst day of my life because I could only spend 2 hours on my phone and not 3 hours on my phone. You know what I mean? Like I could only watch 25 Instagram stories instead of 35 Instagram stories. My life is over. I could only do a marathon of the first 2 Descendants movies on Christmas instead of all 3. Well, the third one's trash anyway, so don't worry about it, right? And here's the thing. When everything is done in order, the sandy things feel a lot better. Like it feels so much better to do this stuff. When you've taken care of anything, when I go water skiing and I still got stuff to take care of with my kids, man, it feels way, way, way worse than when I've made sure to take care of everything in my life in the right order. I feel so much better. I want Christmas to feel great for you. I want you to have peace this year. I want you to think about the orders in life. Now, as we close, I got a big challenge for you guys. All this comes down to a discussion that I want you to have. And I didn't give you blanks in your notes. I gave you questions to ask one another in your notes. Men, husbands, fathers, and brothers, you are anointed by God as leaders of your family. And I just want to ask you to pioneer the way. Maybe your wife makes you do all this. She elbows you. I want you to take initiative, and I want you to lead your families in discussion, okay? Ladies, wives, mothers, sisters, you can do this too. If they won't do it, do it. But have a real conversation. And I want you to ask some questions about this message. I don't want you to just say, oh, that pastor, he used that message with the deals, and that was cool. Did you see how that sand wouldn't come out? I thought it wasn't going to come out because it was like suctioned into that glass, but then it came out. That was funny because you could kind of see him squirming a little bit, couldn't you, up there? I like seeing John get a little off kilter, okay? I don't want you talking about that. Instead, I want you talking about the actual message. Ask some questions like, number one, What order are you putting the rocks in the container of your time? Like, I actually want you to sit there and think, like, what is the order that I'm using in my life? Marinate on, think about it. What is the order? What rock goes in first? And number two, what kind of rock do you have the most difficulty fitting? So I was writing this message, I was actually thinking about what's true in my life. I'm going to be honest. I fit the rock of God in first. I think Kristen and I have been really good at it, especially in this season of our life. It's been good. We had some financial issues at the start of this year because I filed my tax return incorrectly for several years in a row and didn't realize it and had to pay those back. But we're through that, and we're doing really good financially right now. The finance rock is fitting in. A lot of the other stuff is going really well. But for us, the big rock that we haven't been taking care of, especially, is the rock of people relating to our kids. And my wife does a great job with the kids. But me specifically, you know what I mean? I think I've been missing out on a lot. I just realized I want to admit to myself, I need to change the way. I need to reallocate some of my time. I mean, even last night I called, and I was out taking care of something, and I just hear all the kids screaming. I was like, you just call me when they're in bed, okay, honey? I'm so sorry. I'm going to be busy until right after the kids are in bed, and then I'll come home, I promise. But here's the thing. I just thought, I need to reallocate my time. I need to think about this better. I need to make better choices regarding my kids, because that's something that really matters, and I'm not fitting it into my time. And then, here's the big one. Practically, what can you change this week to make things fit? I don't want you to just think about it. Think, oh yeah, I'm leaving that rock. Oh, I've not spent enough time with my kids. I want you to think practically, how am I going to change my life this week? I don't care if you're a Christian or not. What do you need to change to make this a peaceful Christmas experience for you? What is one thing you need to get rid of to make room for what matters most? It doesn't necessarily be get rid of. Do less of. What is one thing you could do less of to make room for something that really matters most this Christmas season? I want you to pre-decide. I want you to plan ahead to make this the best Christmas ever, to experience peace this Christmas. As we come to this Christmas season, I want us to actually prepare in this Advent season by making room for what matters most. And I know that there's a lot of you here today who love God. Okay? And there's some of you who don't. But I know there's a lot of you here today who'd say, well, I love God. I believe in God. But I think there's a lot of us here today who also are not putting God first. And right now, I'm not going to ask anybody to lift up their hand. I'm not going to do any of that invitation stuff. Right now, today, if you're not putting God first, can you just admit that to yourself right now? You don't need to make any signal to me. Just in your mind, if you're not, I want you to say, like, this is or is not me. Some of you, it's not you. But some of you, this whole message is for you. You're realizing, I believe in God. He's somewhere, the rock's somewhere. But if you're not seeking God first, in spite of all the evidence, in spite of all the benefits, you just admit that to yourself right now. And then can you make a commitment to changing that? Like, I want you to resolve saying, I will not let myself walk into a new decade without reprioritizing and reallocating my life to match, to align with my central beliefs. And then finally, don't just commit to it, but can you make an actual plan? I don't think you can do that in this service. But when you go home, can you sit down and really think, what is this going to look like for our family? Like, we're actually going to have to quit some stuff. Like, we want to be a part of church on Sundays, right? What if men in the room, you said, hey, I want to start making that a priority. Ladies, what if you led your family, said, we're actually going to make this a priority. Like, I'm changing my work schedule. I'm changing these other things. I want to make Jesus a priority again because I know that this matters. How can I do it? What am I going to do to get re-engaged with Christ and his kingdom? Christmas is coming. Advent is here. Let's prepare ourselves by committing to put God first. As we close, I'd ask you to have a prayer with me. Lord Jesus, I lift up this church to you, and as we walk into the Christmas season, I just pray that this would be the very best Christmas ever for us, Lord, because we choose to put you first. I pray that for us as a church, this Christmas wouldn't first and foremost be about presents or parties. I ask that it would be all about you. I pray that we would leave this season, Lord, instead of with stress and anxiety or depression and downness, Lord, I ask that we would leave it with peace because your Son, Jesus, has given a hope and a future to the whole world. We acknowledge your work. We acknowledge what you've done for us, and we thank you for it. In the name of Jesus, all God's people said, amen and amen. I want to ask you guys to stand as the band leads us in one more song together.